What's up guys, I thought it would be cool to make a video about the different marker types that are usually used in graffiti. Now, I don't claim to be any expert, or I can actually say I'm quite the opposite. So what I will say in this video is just what I have learned through my experience and research. If you feel that I said something wrong or incorrect, or I left any marker type out of the picture, please let me know in the comments down below. With that being said, I decided to divide the markers in 6 main categories, which are the steel tips markers, whiteout pens, felt tip markers, mop markers, paint stick markers, and finally graphic markers. Now, each of these markers can and should be used in different situations, according to the surface, the style, and so on. And each one of them has different characteristics with pros and cons. During this video, I will discuss the details of each of the marker categories that I've just mentioned, with their pros and cons. Let's start with the most popular markers used in graffiti, the felt tip markers. These markers are great for thick lines, large tags, and work best on smooth surfaces. As they are the most common, you are able to find these markers in many variations in terms of colors, thickness, and overall quality. Now that we have talked about the general characteristics of the felt tip markers, let's talk about more the details together with their pros and cons. This type of markers are able to deliver the classic tags on smooth surfaces. In fact, when writing on smooth surfaces, there is probably no better marker for the job. As I said before, they come in all shapes and sizes.
That's what she said.
But usually, the medium, wide and ultra wide are the most used in the graffiti world. These markers usually last a long time because the felt tip regulates the amount of paint that comes out. Also, when using the variation with pump action felt tip, you will have the ability to drip your tags, but in general, felt tips are harder to drip compared to other markers we will see later. The felt tip markers come with chisel tip and broad tip, also known as round tip. So depending on the style of your tag, you might want to make sure you're buying the right one. Or, if you're able to, you can even customize your tip. Finally, let's see the pros and the cons. For what concerns the pros, they are very silent to use, great for indoor tags, and they offer consistent widths on your lines, so they are perfect if you want a clean tag with minimal drips. Also, they are often refillable and come with sturdy lids that won't leak. Now let's see the cons. They perform extremely bad on rough surfaces. The tips can feel quite rigid, and usually they don't perform amazing when you first use them. In general, felt tips are fairly easy to ruin. Now let's talk about mop markers. In general, these markers are great for big, dripping tags on smooth surfaces. They are squeezable and it's very easy to make as many drips as you want. As I just said, with mop markers, you can have as much drips as you want. In fact, it's just a matter of how much you're squeezing the bottle. But, for good results, it can take some time to master. Mops really excel when you use them on smooth surfaces, for example doors or other smooth metals. Since most mops have sponge or airy tips, when used on a rough surface such as concrete, they will fall apart or even pop off. Mop's tag style is known to be messy, since they usually don't have any regulator stopping the paint from coming through the tip. Finally, let's talk about the pros and the cons. So, as said before, some of the pros are that they are great for large tags on smooth surfaces, they are amazing for drips, and also for silent tagging. The cons are that they are not great markers for beginners, as the drips can be hard to control. The tip will fall apart when used on rough surfaces. Finally, if you don't have a good lid, your mop tips can go over your bag, car or wherever you are keeping it. If that happens, it's gonna be a very long and hard cleanup. Let's now pass to steel tips markers. These markers are great for thin lines, drips and painting on rough surfaces. Steel tip graffiti markers are often filled with thick paint. This type of markers have a rough tip that won't break down as you scrape them over concrete or wood, making them amazing for rough surfaces. They usually present a thin line and they are often squeezable, making them very easy to drip. In fact, it takes good marker control not to make too many drips. Let's now summarize the pros and the cons. Among the pros, the steel tips are very durable and work perfectly on rough surfaces like concrete. They are great if you're into thin lines and lots of drips. The cons are that this is the wrong marker if you want big, thick lines, or need to be silent while doing your tags. Finally, the lid is also sometimes prone to too much leaking. Let's now talk about whiteout pens, also known as correction markers. They are basically a miniature version of steel tip markers and are great for smaller areas, or if you want a super thin line. And they also give you the chance to drip your tags when moving slowly. The correction markers have become very popular in the graffiti world, even if their initial use wasn't even remotely planned for graffiti. In fact, they are common school and office supplies, which have the advantage to easily fit in your pocket and are easy to find. This also gives you the advantage of not drawing too much attention if you get stopped with one in your pocket. Finally, since they produce thin lines, these pens seems to last quite a long time. Now let's quickly summarize their pros and cons. The pros for the whiteout markers are that they are great for thin lines and hard to get places, especially in smooth surfaces. In fact, they are great for finding small spots where other tools won't fit. Also, you will have no issues if cops catch you while carrying one of these. Finally, they last a long time. Let's now talk about graphic markers. These markers are also extremely popular and used by many people with different goals. In the graffiti world, they are usually used in the first step of the process to make the sketch, or they are used by artists who just want to draw on a piece of paper. Since they are very popular, they are also very easy to find, and there are hundreds of different variations, with all shades of colors, sizes and quality. These markers are often found to be bought in packs as well, which allow you to save some money. The graphic markers are usually alcohol-based, but you can find also water-based variations. For what concerns the tips of these markers, you can find them with chisel tip, fine tip or even brush tip. Let's now see the pros and the cons of these markers. The pros are that they are easy to find, they are for everyone's pocket depending on the quality you can afford, there are many colors, different tips, and they are great to draw on paper, mixing colors to create fading effects. The cons are that they are quite expensive if you want a decent quality, they can be used only on paper and the paper needs to be proper for them, so for example there are specific papers for alcohol-based markers which can be also a bit pricey. If you don't use the proper paper, you will obtain bad results, the ink will go through the paper and so on. Let's now pass to the final type of markers I will talk about in this video, which is the paintstick markers. These markers, like some of the others I talked about, were not created specifically for graffiti. In fact, they are industrial markers created for blue-collar workers. However, because of the characteristics that I will now unpack, they became very popular among graffiti writers as well. Generally speaking, the paintstick markers are simple and inexpensive. These markers can write on all kinds of materials, even on wet and dirty surfaces. The paint is also extremely permanent when dried and both weather and UV resistant. You can find them also on fluorescent and metallic colors. The cool thing about these markers is that you can use them in any condition and in any surface. In fact, you can use them in steel, iron, rubber, wood, plastic, glass and concrete, no matter if it's a smooth or rough surface. Let's now finish talking about the pros and the cons of these markers. The pros obviously are that they can be used in any surface and condition. They are quite inexpensive, they are small and easy to carry, and they are extremely permanent once they dry. The cons are that you can never drip your tags, they could last not so long, especially if used on rough surfaces, the colors are not so vibrant and they tend to fade. So guys, these were all the markers types in this video. Let me know in the comments what are your favorite types of markers, if you have a favorite brand, and what kind of models you prefer. Also, if you have any feedback on my video, if I left out something, or if there is any specific topic you would like me to cover, write it down in the comments. If you watched the video until now, thanks a lot. Finally, since it took me a lot of effort to make, if you appreciated this video, please leave a like, let me know in the comments, share it with your friends, and if you want to support me even more, check out my graffiti and street art inspired streetwear brand, Be Different Clothing. You find the link in the first comment and in the description of this video. If you're interested, I also have a Discord channel that you can freely join and where you can also share your art. I'm also thinking that I might do a video in the future reacting to the art that you guys share in there. See you in the next video. Cheers!